All right, perfect timing.
All right, there we go.
Couldn't be better. Okay.
Would you mind just for the recording introducing your team one more time? Thank you.
All right, so Leo Scott with Redwood Scott. I am the consultant project manager, joined by Matt Nichols, who is the city's transportation manager. He stepped in for Jessica Manzi, the former city transportation manager, and Matt is now serving as my counterpart with the city, and then also Tiffany Gebhardt with Redwood Scott, helping with stakeholder communication. So that's our team. We'll jump in here to presentation. And why don't you move to the next slide, Tiffany? What I want to cover tonight as we go through the deck here, can you advance it? Hopefully.
Oh, sorry, I think there's a lag.
Oh my goodness, that's a big lag.
Yeah. Are you seeing this first?
I am not seeing, I'm just seeing the first slide.
I'm gonna stop and reshare and see if that will help.
All right, let's do that. That's the slide I was after. There we go.
There we go. Okay.
That's it. All right. So I want to cover the project need, which may be for most of you just a refresher. And then obviously if there's some of you that are new to the project, I want to make sure I at least covered a bit of it so that you have some background. Happy to take questions after I kind of jump through those slides. Then spend the bulk of our time talking about the bicycle and pedestrian facilities that are planned as part of the project. And then the significance of that for connecting communities, more specifically on the bay side of 101, but we can talk more generally and broadly as well. And then I'm going to finish with a little bit of an update for you on where we are with the project and its progress. So with that, Jimmy, let's jump into project need. Hopefully the slides will advance.
Let's be impersnickety. I apologize. I'm not sure. Hang on why it's doing that. Let me just bear with me.
If we have to, I have the deck handy so I can put it up too.
It's just not wanting to connect. But it's, you know.
All right, we're getting there. All right, so for those familiar with the 84-101 interchange and having driven through it, if you have, this should be a familiar experience. This photo was taken in 2022, so in the middle of the COVID downturn, still a significant amount of congestion, certainly at commute hours of the day. This travel pattern is certainly returning and continuing. And so the project was envisioned a couple decades ago to address this issue, which has only continued to be persistent that entire time. So the impact to the freeway shows up on the next slide. On 101, those of you who drive southbound to get into Redwood City through this interchange have probably experienced this backup on 101. That is clearly the result of the interchange performance, but more importantly, it's the impact of the Broadway and 84 interchange or intersection that backs up this traffic here. So clearly there's some congestion issues, but more importantly, some cyclist and pedestrian issues. But before I jump to that, I want to jump to the next slide and show you kind of the significance of the backup. This slide here shows you what was at the time that the traffic study was done, the length of the backups, the peak backups during the AM and PM peak periods. So you can see that the AM peak, not quite so big, obviously, as the PM peak, but it's traffic congestion on all legs of all of the intersections. So there's obviously some challenges just operationally with the interchange for vehicular traffic that impacts everybody throughout the day. And then maybe more significantly to this group, the next slide shows you the cycling experience. There are certainly sidewalks along the city streets, but there are none through the interchange, as you well know, and there are no bicycle facilities whatsoever in the vicinity of the interchange. This next slide shows you more clearly just how much the gap is that exists there. There are class 2 and some class 3 facilities on either side of the interchange, but nothing through the interchange. And so we're going to talk about how we're going to close that gap with the project. So the next slide shows a little bit more detail here on the situation. I would say certainly when this interchange was built, Caltrans was not majoring on bicycles and pedestrians. That has been changing over the last 10 plus years. And so providing for bicycles and pedestrians in this interchange now becomes an important part of what Caltrans believes they need to do. So that's good. The problem with this for bicycles and pedestrians is that you can see here, I don't have them labeled on this slide. Now I'm getting into this. I might have been hoped to have done a slide. There are 7 slip ramps in this interchange. And a slip ramp, as I'm sure avid cyclists as you are know, the slip ramp is a problem for cyclists and pedestrians because the traffic doesn't have to stop. And so to navigate an interchange like this as a cyclist is particularly difficult, if not dangerous. And for pedestrians, it's just a problem, quite simply, because they're not going fast enough to dodge the traffic that never stops. So what we envision here is putting in some facilities to help solve that. So the next slide shows you the bicycle and pedestrian facilities that we plan to put in. So we have a combination of class 1, 2, and 4 facilities that we plan to put in. The ones that we'll focus on today are the ones along Woodside Road and the path along that Seaport Boulevard to the left of Woodside, which runs along the railroad spur. And then also the class 4 bike facility that we're going to put over Woodside Road on what becomes the future connector ramp. And I've got some visual simulations that help illustrate this much better. And so with that, let's keep going. Tiffany, the next slide. I would imagine are probably all familiar with this, but just to make sure I don't have anyone without being properly initiated, class 1 facilities are bicycle and pedestrian combined paths separated from traffic lanes, so separated from cars and trucks. Class 2 is a bike lane that's striped into the typical roadway cross section, and not nearly as safe or nearly as protected as a class 1. Class 3 is just a bike route, so that's the arrow striped in the street, and it's a shared facility with automobile and truck traffic. And then the class 4 facility is a separated bike lane only, or bike trackway, or cycleway. There's a number of different names, cycle track, that class 4 bike lanes get labeled by. We have, as I said, plans to put in 1, 2, a little bit of 3, and some 4. And we'll show you the links of those here in a moment. All right, next slide. Okay, I'm going to jump through these. If you have questions about the bike path type, we'll come back to these if we need to. These are just further illustrations and descriptions of those types of facilities. All right, so I'm going to jump in here, and I just realized I didn't pause after my introduction on the need of the facility. So let me push pause here before I get into these, because we're going to get into some specifics now. Any questions on the overall project, Matt, in the chat?
I think the questions we'll get to later, which is the connection to the Bay Trail. I think the other one to deal with this first part, though, is there's a question from Christian about, does congestion equal cars? So that's a backup of cars and trucks.
Yes, that is congestion of cars and trucks. Yeah.
I wanted to point out there, I'm going to cheat and point out there for Christian, is that's also, congestion is also this kind of a major source of a safety problem and a air quality problem.
Yeah, we do have an accident patterns associated with the congestion, and obviously idling trucks and cars are not helpful for air congestion, or air pollution rather. All right, so let's jump in on the specifics. So this is an image here in the front of the image here. You can see the new interchange configuration. This is looking what is essentially north on Woodside Road towards the port and the bay. So we're looking down on the 84 Woodside Road and Bay Street intersection here. You can see we've got Class 2 facilities on both sides running through the intersection, and then keep continuing as Class 2. And actually, the Class 2 on the northbound side, not far after, actually is separated with a barrier, so it becomes a Class 4 facility there up to where the right-hand turn pockets are. And then you can see similarly, there's a barrier on the left-hand side or the southbound side for a part of it as well. So there's a bit of Class 4 mixed in here with a Class 2 up to that Broadway intersection. And then when we get to the Broadway intersection, next slide, we at the crosswalks, and on all 4 crosswalks, we actually have the cycle track design, so it's bike lane only alongside the pedestrians in the crosswalk. And so now we're looking down at Broadway here, and then under what is actually going to be the new flyover structures that deliver roadway or highway traffic to and from the Veterans Boulevard corridor. So you're looking here in the foreground at the on-ramp to southbound 101, and then right immediately behind it is the off-ramp from northbound 101, both starting at the Broadway at the Veterans Boulevard at Chestnut. And so that's what you're looking at. And then you can see here that we start a Class 1 facility there on the far right, as well as a Class 2. And that Class 2 is on both sides, actually. So there's a Class 2 facility in both northbound and southbound. All right, so then we'll jump to the next slide, and we'll be looking here at the actual 101 freeway. The immediate foreground, I should say, is actually the off-ramp. That's the northbound 101 off-ramp to Veterans Boulevard. And we're looking at the new on-ramp from Woodside Road right below that structure. And you can see that it is a Class 2 and then the Class 1 facility that continues under those structures to the freeway structure and continues on. And there's a Class 2 on the far left-hand side for the southbound traffic. What this looks like in a cross-section on the next slide is you can see we've got traffic. Oops, sorry, Tiffany, stay in the cross-section for a second. Yeah, you can see the Class 1 on the right-hand side there.
Is it this one?
Class 1. Yep, that's the one I want.
Okay.
And the Class 2 beside it, and then you can see the Class 2 on the southbound side of the left-hand side of the screen. We will be widening that whole cross-section to make room for the bicycle and pedestrian facilities as well as additional lane width. Fortunately, we don't have to reconstruct the 101 interchange, or I should say the structures, so we get to continue those as well. All right, and then the next slide looks at the new on and off ramp configurations from northbound to northbound. So we're looking there on the right-hand side at what was a loop ramp on ramp without stopping. And so that Class 1 facility comes from under 101 and pops out there. The important detail here is the stop bar that will require traffic to stop and allow safe passage of pedestrians and cyclists in the Class 1 facility to cross that traffic, which would otherwise not stop. And then the Class 2 cyclists obviously have to navigate through that facility there to allow cars to move over to make the right-hand turns. That Class 1 facility continues north of the intersection as well as the Class 2, and you can see the Class 2 again on the southbound side as well. All right, so then the next shot jumps us on. I don't have a good shot for the vision I need. All right, we'll have to come back to this. This is looking actually at the facility that runs on the eastern side of the Highway 84 Woodside Road. This is the railroad spur that runs to the port, and there is plans to put a Class 1 bike facility, bike and ped facility alongside the spur. And so the next slide shows you what that looks like on a cross-section basis. So you can see the railroad track there in the middle of the area, and then the Class 1 bike facility is to the right, and that parallels the UPRR tracks all the way up to the Blomquist intersection. All right, and so then the next slide moves us over to looking at the new Veterans Boulevard on-ramp configuration. So we're at the Veterans and Chestnut intersection here. And you can see the Class 4 facility there to the right of the traffic. It runs up over that structure, which carries the cyclists up over Woodside Road and touches down on the far side of what is now the 24-hour fitness. And then there's also a Class 1 that runs alongside that to get people over to Woodside Road at the street level. All right, and then I think the next slide is a cross section of that. So you can see here the Class 1 next to the Class 4, and then there's a Class 1 over on the far left-hand side as well. All right, and I believe that is my last slide. What's the next slide, Tiffany? It's a, oh yeah, just relative links of things that we're building. So one of the things that we have to do is generate some money through grant writing and other things. And one of the things that's important is for us to help people understand how much bicycle and pedestrian facility we're adding relative to what was there and relative to what we're doing on the street. So we're adding just over 4 miles of bike and pedestrian facilities. And the next slide kind of shows you a comparison of those links here. More class, mostly Class 2, but between the Class 1 and the Class 4, we're almost the same amount. So a little over 4 miles of bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and only 7, almost 3/4 of a mile of improvements along 84 itself. So this may not impress you very much, but this is impressive to people who fund transportation projects. And so it's a pretty helpful metric for us to be able to advocate for funding for bicycle and pedestrian facilities of the sort that we're talking about. All right, so I think that's the last one. Next slide is a transition slide, I believe. Yep. So before we jump into that, let's take some questions, Matt.
Yeah, so there's some well, there's 3 questions really that are I'll put together, but like you can also read them, which is the switching between basically working to maximize the number of Class 4s, Class 4 segment as instead of Class 2 wherever possible. So one was a reaction to the flipping the half blocks where you have the sorting of the bike lane and the turning pocket. Why is that? Yep. Because it's only half on either side. And the other one is about lane widths. Couldn't they be reduced so you can find room for to turn that Class 2 into a 4? And let's see.
So,
and then
yeah,
also
so
the other one that's important is that one turn you showed with the crossing. Is there anything that could slow down? What will make the vehicle slow down, or beacons or anything else that would make the vehicle slow down at that right turn? So those are
okay. So Tiffany, let's go back to that the slide there where we were looking from at Bay Street, the first image there. Oh, nope, sorry. You jump back to the first, that one right there. That's perfect. Yeah. All right. So the first question was on the, why do we drop the 4 in favor of a 2 as we get to those right-hand turns in both directions? I wasn't the designer, and I've only recently started on the project, so I don't have the history entirely at my disposal here as to the full range of thinking. But obviously, the right-hand turn movements for the vehicular traffic have to be provided for. I assume that the decision was made here given constraints for right-of-way and purchase of property and cost reasons, that this was the best way to provide both for cyclists as well as those right-hand turning movements. And so it is a good question, I think, specifically on the northbound side as to why they don't continue that barrier, because there's no traffic getting into that lane. So that's a question we'll have to get back to you on. On the southbound side, the traffic does have to cross over that lane in order to have that protected right-hand turn. So that's why the barrier doesn't continue on that side. but again, I have to follow up with you on the right-hand turn for the northbound there.
Yeah, there's another note.
And then,
Sorry, Leo, that
Yep.
southbound should also probably be a dashed green to indicate
Yeah,
crossing movement. So,
yeah, there's some details that might be missing here that we need to add in. Okay, and then you said there was another question about the stopping. So Tiffany, advance it to the next one, the Broadway look.
not there.
The next one. Nope, the next one more.
There.
That one.
So that crossing,
so
the visibility and so just talk about that.
So the question here specifically was
Anything to mitigate or to manage the speeds and really yielding for the right turning, those two right turning vehicle lanes.
yeah, as people are getting in there and crossing over the class 2 facility.
Right.
Would be my assumption there. That's a good question. Again, I don't know specifically what's happening there. I do know that is not this is not too far from a prior intersection, because there's an intersection immediately on the other side of the freeway. So we're probably not even 100 yards, 150 yards from the signal. So certainly a cyclist, and I don't know the signal phasing. I'll have to ask about the signal phasing here, that if cyclists are given the head start, that they would be more visible. The other way is obviously to lag the traffic that would be ahead of them, but we can investigate how that is envisioned as well. Fair question. And then I think there was a lane width question, Matt.
Yeah, the lane widths are, I think, possibly related to speed management, but also really specifically about finding room for the a barrier to make a separated class 4 instead of a 2, which was going under the
Yes. So Tiffany, back up one to that cross section. Yeah. So the question here was why 2 12s and not all 11s? We have heavy truck movement through the interchange here. So my assumption is that given the amount of port traffic and the size of the vehicles, that there was agreement to size the lanes at 12 to prevent safe truck movement through this stretch of 84. Again, we can check on that to verify that, but that would be my hunch. And you notice there's no inside shoulder, and so this is a pretty tight section. Caltrans would typically require an inside shoulder in this configuration, so they've already made an exception here for the configuration we're seeing. Yeah. And I would also presume that the provision of the class 1 was a factor as well. And Heather, I see your hand raised. So did you have something to interject here?
Yeah, a couple of things that I wanted to follow up on that. First, the crossing, the right hand, I think it was northbound, the one we were just talking about. Is there, I guess I'm just throwing out the idea of having some sort of signal there for bike crossing that's tied with the previous intersection?
Yeah, go forward one slide, Tiffany. Yeah, the sims don't show the signals at all. So this would be a signalized intersection, and all directions of traffic would be stopped and green lighted as appropriate.
That's why this looks weird. Okay, so let me explain a little bit to everybody. This is a simulation that these are stills from a simulation, from an animated simulation. It's very useful. But I've been trying to figure, and this is the first time we visited in a slide deck. It's much nicer than looking at flat, aerial maps. But I just realized, Leo, you're right. It's missing a signal, which is a bad look. Okay.
Yeah, and also on that, if it's possible to angle the bike lane, I'm not sure how to describe it, but right now it kind of curves to the right, and then you have to cross to the left. Like if there's a way that it can actually curve to the right, because that's a hard look over your left shoulder.
It makes for a sharp 90-degree left-hand turn.
Yeah.
And so, okay. I believe there's space for that.
The other thing I wanted to follow up on, there's a lot of questions in the chat about car lanes. So could you go over for us where you're adding car lanes, where you're taking car lanes away? And then we definitely do want an answer on that lane width, because that is also something that kind of forces out bikes often, is having car lanes that are too wide.
Yeah, so the width here is probably easiest visible here. So if you are familiar with the interchange today, it's essentially 2 lanes in each direction, not 3, and it has a single left-hand turn pocket. So there's a lane here added, a through lane on both directions. So going northbound, you'll see there's 3 through lanes through the intersection here, and then the 2 right-hand turn pockets where today there's no pocket. It's simply a loop on ramp. You just it's a slip ramp. You just kind of glide over and take the loop. And then in the southbound direction, you'll see the 3 through lanes here, plus the start of what is the left-hand turn pocket that becomes 2 lanes underneath the freeway. So when you go back back a slide, Tiffany, to the cross section, you'll see the 3 through lanes on the right, and then you'll see that single left-hand turn becomes a double left-hand turn for the on-ramp traffic to southbound 101. So 1 through lane in each direction through this stretch of the 84 Woodside, the combination of Seaport and Woodside Road. So it's the 3 lanes start at Seaport, or at Blumfuss rather, on Seaport, and then carry all the way through the interchange down to Bay.
Okay, so that's just one section. Could you maybe do that same thing for the other aerials, for any lanes that are added or taken away?
Yes, there's no, okay, so this cross section here is pretty representative of all of them. So let's go through the set. Let's go back to the start from Bay Street for a moment. That's probably the best thing to do. All right, so you can see here at Bay Street, there's 2 through lanes northbound, and well, 3. It's a right-hand turn and a through lane, but it's the start of the 3 through lanes there, allowing for the left-hand turn pocket. And then in the southbound direction, you see the 3 through lanes coming at us on the left-hand side. So I don't know the lane widths here specifically. My assumption is they're at least 11s, and they may be 12s, but I'll have to check on the lane widths. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. And then if you go forward, Tiffany, to the Broadway intersection, you can see the 3 through lanes there, northbound. And then similarly, you can see the dual left-hand turn pockets and the 3 through lanes on the left-hand side. Again, I don't know off the top of my head the widths of those lanes, but we can certainly get them and provide them to you.
Leo,
and then
there was a question actually about this intersection. So before you go, sorry to make you take on 2 things, but Aaron's asking about explaining this intersection. It looks like the bike lane will disappear. Northbound cyclists will have to cross from the left side and then cross again at Woodside.
Run that question by me again.
Yeah, sorry, I can explain it. I just don't understand, like, because right now when you're biking down Broadway, there's a marked lane there on the right side when you're biking. So you're biking.
Okay.
Yeah, from going from Broadway across Woodside, and then you have to wait for the light. So.
Gotcha. Okay, so Tiffany, let's go back to the dotted map at the start. So back up about 5 slides. There we go, that one. Okay, so on Broadway today, there is a class 2 on what is eastbound. Yeah, headed eastbound from 84. That's the yellow dots. And then there's a class 3. That's not really a bike facility that runs both directions from the mid block down towards Charter. So the project will actually have a class 2. I gotta make sure I've got my details right here. We have a class 2 on the, what would be the westbound approaching from Broadway, approaching Woodside Road will be a class 2. And then headed away from Broadway in that, on that same stretch, it's also, I believe, it will become a class 2 as well. We show, yeah, proposed class 2 going to the other direction. So that blue line there is not fully correct, because there is a class 2 right now on that, what is westbound approaching Broadway. So we need to clarify that. That's a holdover from the city's plan. And then on the left-hand side of 84 Woodside Road, there will be some work developed. There will be some development of the bicycle and pedestrian facilities on that side by the developer. So the developer of that large parcel, which is now a huge hole, includes some bicycle facilities all the way around the block. So in addition to what we're doing in Woodside Road, there's plans for that class 2. I think it's actually going to become a class 1. And then that will join our proposed class 1 that comes up to the intersection. And then the class 2, I believe, is the facility going away on what is westbound, headed away from Woodside Road. So there will be facilities on both sides, and it'll be a mix of types.
Leo, can you talk about there's concerns about just the improvement and all the room for cars. Is it expected to increase traffic volumes, and is it expected to serve what's the development path on the other side of on the bay side of the 101? But there's concern that this is actually going to increase traffic or traffic volumes.
Yeah, in terms of the work done traffic forecasting wise, the metric in today's transportation funding world is known as vehicle miles traveled. So I presume most of you have heard that before. We moved away from what used to be the ABC metric for congestion. And so in this case, based on the forecasting work done for the area, which included development, there is no net increase in vehicle miles traveled. So it is, while we're adding lanes to facilitate operation, it's not anticipated that we're actually going to increase vehicle miles traveled through the interchange. So it's hard for me to say, with great accuracy, because it's a forecast, exactly what that's going to look like. But the facility will operate much better in terms of stop and go traffic, because we're doing two things. We're allowing veterans to fly over the Woodside Road, which just by itself is pretty significant improvement for traffic operations in the interchange. And then we're providing for better movement within the interchange with the added lanes and left-hand and right-hand turn pockets. So it should perform better. I realize that that could equate to higher speeds, which cyclists would say is not necessarily conducive to safe riding, but that's also one of the reasons for all the additional bicycle and pedestrian facility additions, is to provide for that. So I think does that answer the question?
I'll leave that to the group to decide, but
I mean, I just have to say that we've seen time and again that the VMT projections for widening projects aren't really accurate. That every time we add lanes, we're seeing much higher than expected volumes. So I do want to throw that out there. But we can, Giuliano, you had a question?
You just essentially asked exactly my question, which is past experience shows adding lanes adds capacity, more room for more vehicles. More vehicles means more VMT. So it is, I'm dubious, let's say.
Thanks.
well, I would argue that I'll let Leo respond maybe more technically, but I don't think this is I think there is such a thing as terrible street design, and it leads to safety problems. So with this many slip lanes, it's just a hazard for bicyclists and pedestrians, and for that kind of queuing, it's a hazard for everyone using the freeway. And those drivers also come in at angles, and it's again a hazard for bicycle pedestrian. There's also no way to use this. So I think this is solving a really persistent traffic problem on many major streets through the area,
100%. There's a
I
whole
don't
lot
think
to
it's
like about
I
this,
don't
right?
think it's adding VMT, and the benefit cost analysis shows that what it's doing is reducing air pollution in low income communities primarily, and improving the operations, and reducing congestion and improving safety.
Okay. We could debate this. Let's see if there's any more questions about
I know I'm
everything
just saying
going
I
on.
support the basic thought of induced demand. I've been a climate change transportation planner for 25 years. I totally agree with you, but that's not the case here. That's all I'm saying.
I do see another question. Will this be part of completing the Bay Area Trail? I'm assuming that's Bay Trail, Kevin?
This, yeah, I assume so. And I forgot to do that. This slide's the best slide we have right now on the deck to answer that. So the Bay Trail right now essentially runs down the East Bay Shore Boulevard. That's the blue Class 2. Ultimately, it's planned to be along that green dotted line, so it becomes a future Class 1 facility. We do provide for, and unfortunately I don't have an image for this, which I should have, of that intersection with Blomquist, where we're providing for passage across the railroad tracks along Blomquist, and then the Class 1 as well as Class 2s on both sides of Blomquist. So we have a stretch on Blomquist of 100 yards or so. It's not a very long length that we're providing for, that would technically be Bay Trail, a segment of the Bay Trail. MTC does have plans to connect to that and take it to the left, which is shown here in the yellow, and then as well as complete that green Class 1 section to the right. So the answer is yes, but it's a very short section of the Bay Trail.
And I see
All right,
Jim.
Jim?
Thank you. Yes. And whoops. Oh, I am unmuted. Perfect. I unfortunately got here late, so I missed a lot of conversation. But the one thing that was glaring to me as I'm looking at this map is that why are we trying to get through this interchange, and why is there nothing going across Maple Street?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. And since I'm not a city cyclist route planner, I can't answer the Maple part. I can only speak for the interchange, which I have responsibility for. So the interchange itself is an improvement project for which the city is engaged, and we have money to build it. We don't have funds to do anything on Maple for this particular interchange project. I'm gonna have to let Matt speak up on that one.
Well, I can't actually answer it either. This is part of the Walk, Bike, Thrive Redwood City plan, so it's gone in through. It was before my time, but we can certainly bring that to Malahat and go to the history of the routes. But this is also showing the bike routes of the planned bike plan. So
Notice me shaking my head. Those guys have absolutely no idea what they're doing. You've already stated, Matt, about traffic planning. I won't start to describe what I feel about people, but because I go through that area all the time, and I actually do go to a business on East Bay Shore Road, I always take Maple Street. Why the heck would I go through a busy interchange with a whole bunch of traffic lights and traffics and all that? And I've taken my bicycle down there many, many times. There actually is some kind of a bike path along Bloomquist. There's a heck of a lot of trucks with a lot of debris, but they actually have sweepers that go through every day, to my amazement. Maple Street is the only thing that actually, to me, makes sense, as opposed to spending all this money to try to get through a very congested area, which is that interchange. Anyway, that's just my suggestion.
no, that's interesting. I'll definitely look into what the route planning for Maple Street. This I will defend is that I think it's such a bad traffic and safety place, and in sort of one of the victories I think of bicycle and pedestrian activists is that Complete Streets is now state law in Caltrans planning, and so the gaps like this are really unacceptable in any if there's any freeway project or highway improvement project that goes forward, it really is by law, if at all possible, must include access for all people, all users. And so I think this is I mean, yes, so you guys brought up some really good design specifics, but this is a lot of bike facilities that should have been there, you know, whatever, maybe not should have, but because of Complete Streets, which is an activist victory to get a Caltrans directive, this has the momentum, and hopefully I want to give Leo some time to go into the next thing, which is the momentum to finalize the fundraising so that we can actually start construction. So I'm going to use that as a segue and let Leo at least tell us where we are in the project, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, that's great, Matt, because I need to actually, I can finish the call, but I need to be away from my computer to do that. So let me jump through the final few slides here to get everybody oriented. So one of the things that is important for us in terms of the whole funding of this project is helping the granting agencies understand how we're connecting communities, and there's plenty of that for us to talk about. And this is illustrative of one of them. Is we do have a population, as I'm sure all of you are aware. There's a series of trailer parks on the bay side of East Bayshore, of the East Bayshore side of 101, and they do have students that are there that ultimately have to make their way over to the downtown side of 101. So providing for their ability to get across the freeway safely is an important part of what we want to be able to facilitate. Obviously, we can't guarantee that they would use any of the facilities, but we certainly want to make them available for that movement. And then also moving up and over the Woodside Road and or along Broadway or Bay Street also becomes important to us. So that's one of the features of the project that we hope facilitates that. In addition to that, we have the new navigation center, which is on the bay side of 101 along that Maple corridor. So providing, again, bicycle pedestrian ability to move, whether it's on Maple, potentially we aren't touching that, but certainly along that Seaport Boulevard facility or on Woodside Road is also important. In addition to that, in that general area, there's a 100% affordable housing project that's going in. So there's more people that will be in that area, because in addition to that, there's also one more development that's taking place on the next slide, again, also in that same area. So there'll be quite a few additional residents over the next couple of years in that area on the bay side of 101. And so accommodating them is an important part of the project. And that's one of the things that funding agencies want to see. And so then the final couple slides here give you a quick update on the project itself. It's a $321 million project total. We have $216 million of that committed. So on the left-hand pie chart, the blue and orange are the funded portions. The piece that needs to be funded is the $105 million chunk. What we envision there on how we fill that gap is on the right-hand side. We're looking to have the state contribute on the order of $77 million, about $25 million from federal sources. That's as we see it today. As we apply and are successful and or not successful, the way that pie gets shaped ultimately will just depend on our awards. So the significance here is that we have about $208 million of local funds between SMCTA and the city. We have about $8 million in state funds. So on the next slide, that shows you what is important to us when we start to market the project is that we have a 33% need, and we have relatively little state money and no federal money of significance yet. And so part of the story in terms of securing the funding is to help people in the federal and the state programs understand that this local contribution is significant, and that there's an local investment in the project. All right, and then the final look here is at our schedule. We are currently working now on acquiring right-of-way. So that's the purchase of the real estate that we need for the widening of Woodside Road. That is right now on our critical path because we've got the railroad involvement as well. We have to get railroad clearance on our designs to provide safe crossings of both the Veterans Crossing as well as the Blomquist Crossing. And then we do have to finish off our design. So we are updating the design. It was put on hold back in the middle of the COVID period. We're reconnecting and redeveloping that. So we do have some finishing to do so we can look at some of the questions and suggestions you're making. I can't promise you 100% on any of them yet, but we can certainly get back to you. And then we anticipate lining up all the funding, getting the plans done, and starting construction in 2027. I'd like to beat that, but at the moment, we think this is the most likely given the current climate that we're in on all of these items. And so that's the last slide that we have in the deck. And I'm going to open it for questions. I'm going to duck away from the screen, but I've got my phone on so I can take questions still.
So I think we should go to Carvin first. He had his hand up in the last segment, and then I did see another question from Aaron. So Carvin, do you want to verbally ask it?
Oh, yes, yeah. So I did want to bring up the Blomquist East Bayshore Road intersection. I know it's pretty tough to navigate going southbound, like to Bayshore. Could you talk about the changes going in on the East Bayshore Road side? Because in the diagram, I see new bicycle facilities proposed there.
Yeah, so you're talking about coming from, say, the navigation center or the police facility towards Seaport on Blomquist?
Yes, well, specifically East Bayshore Road. So that same intersection by this.
Okay,
yeah.
so coming up from, say, the industrial area down there and the trailer communities along Bayshore to get to the intersection with Blomquist and Seaport?
Yes, so that intersection
Okay.
just on the East Bayshore side, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll start off first with the pedestrian crossing for the purposes of the railroad crossing. Union Pacific was very specific in insisting that we provide a single perpendicular gated crossing for pedestrians, and that will be on what is the south side of Blomquist. And so the crosswalks there will be on the south side of Blomquist over to the south side of East Bayshore, and then along, and then in order to get to the north side of that intersection, the crossing will be on the East Bayshore side of the intersection. So it'll be an L configuration there. I'm sorry, I don't have an image for that. I should have thought of that. We do have provision for the Class 2 cyclists to be able to just move along that East Bayshore in a Class 2 and cross the intersection, and then connect up essentially on the Blomquist side in Class 2 facilities. And then the Class 1 facility on the Blomquist side will be essentially that will be the railroad crossing for pedestrians and cyclists who are on the Class 1 facility. And then there is also on the East Bayshore side going back down, sort of headed east on East Bayshore, is also for part of that distance. There's that Class 1 that comes up from under on along Woodside Road, and then there's a Class 2, I believe it is, that will be along East Bayshore. So I think that covers all the legs.
If I could just for time, I think I'd like to share the city's recent application to the federal raise program, because I think for several of you who probably want to dig deeper into the benefit cost analysis or the VMT air quality, and to take longer to look at the designs, it's all in a single PDF because we just submitted it last month. So I'll be putting on the city's project website, but that might take me till next week. So why don't I also email that to Heather right after this? And is that the best way to do that?
Yeah, you could do that. If it's on a website now, you could drop the link in the chat.
It's just not up.
Okay.
It's not up yet on the website. So it'll take a couple, it'll be up on the city's project page for 10184 by next week, but I'll also send it to Heather right after this meeting. And anyone who wants it could just request it from her, and And we can
Yeah.
take, the city can, we're happy to take other questions on the project. There's Leo gets directly the emails that are on the city's website now for project questions.
I think
I don't know if
only
we have to stop right at 7, but
Yeah,
that's
I
in
think
case we
we
did.
had one more question in the chat. Was a roundabout considered at the intersection of Broadway and Woodside? That's the only other question I've seen, so maybe we can
There's a
take
couple
that
others
one.
here.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That I can try to answer a little. Yes, there's money coming from CCAG. Categorized as a highway project. I'm not sure what that means.
So for the funding, when it comes to the TA, what you can spend it on depends upon whether it's a highway project or not, and hence the question.
Segments of it, yes, are highway project. But go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, the CCAG funding is state transportation improvement funding specifically for right-of-way acquisition. The TA funding right now is assigned to cover the balance of our design as well as the right-of-way, both right-of-way acquisition as well as the right-of-way related administration. And then we will also be using some of it for construction. So the TA's money touches all phases of the project.
Thank you very much. It seems like the TA could be doing more to make this better in that case if it changed some of its perspectives on where it should be spending money.
Yeah, that would be something you could discuss with them. Sure.
Indeed, I'm on the CAC.
Okay.
So the only other question I see was a roundabout considered at the intersection of Broadway and Woodside.
Yeah, all right. I don't know the answer to that question, although I do think, and you were probably aware, Caltrans is not terribly keen on roundabouts. And so since this is a significant intersection for them, they definitely weigh in on such things. So I would guess probably not, but we can validate that and provide a response.
There was also a question about schools, and yes, on the slide deck, which I think we can also provide there, I think we had some other slides, Tiffany, what Leo showed was the Hoover School. We have those same location matching maps for a number of the other schools in the area. In terms of the projection of what the new bike traffic from those schools will be like, I don't think we have that. We don't have a specific projection like that. Anything else?
I guess the follow-up question to that is, has the county's high injury network map, is there any overlay here that will tell us a little bit, at least about how many collisions there are for bike and peds for that demographic?
Yes, that's in the raised grant. The bike and ped is overrepresented at the location for incidents. However, because there's no facilities, it's a little hard to say that that's anyway, it's true, and yet that's not the real risk. The real risk is it's so high nobody will go there for bike and pedestrian. So but the data on, yes, it's both collisions. It's higher than the commute share, but that doesn't mean, like, it's at like 6%. So that's not a huge number, I believe, of the total collisions, most of which occur at the slip ramps and on the roads. But it is overrepresented to the commute shares, is what I recall.